Hey, everybody. I'm Portia Sabin, the president of the Music Business Association, and welcome to Let's Talk Physical. I'm joined by Steve Harkins, who I'm going to let speak in just a second. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention that today is June 2nd. It is 1 year since the show Must Be Paused occurred last year. I really think that that is an important day for us to commemorate and remember. And, we are not done with the fight against racism in the music industry. We are just beginning. And that's important work that I hope we all take very seriously and carry forward in everything that we do. I also wanted to mention that June 3rd of last year was the first day of Couch Camp for Music Biz, which was the very first of our virtual events. And we have done, this one that we are doing today is number 55. So if you can believe it, we have done 55 events in 12 months and we're still here, we're still alive, we're still kicking. So thanks to everybody for joining us on this crazy roller coaster of a year. And with that, Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Portia. Congratulations, and thanks for navigating us through the most difficult set of circumstances that certainly unplanned. And you've morphed an organization that's several decades old that basically relied on one live event and morphed it into 55 events online that brought great value. So congratulations to you and the staff and everybody here. Please remember to support Music Business Association. If you're not a member, you should be. This is brought to you live, but that's our 20-second little soundbite and advertisement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a reminder, you guys are already doing it, but feel free to interact with each other in the chat. That's been a great way for people to network and connect with each other over the last year. So I'm really excited for today's program. This is our second Let's Talk Physical. And I think they've both been really, really useful and educational and assistive to this group of people in our community. So Steve, why don't you take it away and do a little intro?
Thanks, Portia. Just real quickly, just wanted to make everybody aware the Physical Business Action Committee operates as an umbrella underneath the Music Business Association, tremendously supportive. And the committee represents independent music stores, national retail, online retail, promoting the commerce of music in the form of physical goods and ownership. So real quickly, Ken Glazer is a member. He's brought a lot to the table from Alliance, Sue Vega, Ingram Entertainment, Kerry Cullinan from the Department of Record Stores and Record Store Day, Andrea Pichel from Sims Coalition, Carl Mello of Newbury Comics, Terry Courier of Music Millennium, John Kuntz of Waterloo Records, Portia Sabin, of course, and Nicole Hennessy, the Music Business Association, with support from Elena Alderman of Record Archive, and Duncan Brown of Newbury Comics, and Michael Kurtz, of course, the Record Store Day and Department of Record Stores. And we warmly welcome our new members, Justin Johnson of Darkside Records and Marquetta Rodriguez of Sirius Sound, celebrating 30 years record retailing in Houston, Texas. Congratulations, Marquetta. And with that, our first guest was brought back based on popular demand. He saves lives because he brings great data so we can celebrate where our business has been and where it's heading. So with that, please welcome Keith Caulfield, Senior Director of Charts with Billboard.
Lord have mercy. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You sound great.
Can you even see me moving?
We can. You're doing well.
Oh, this is brilliant. Watch it all fall apart in just a few minutes. I see so many people I know in the chat, so it's incredible. And they only get to spend 10 minutes of listening to me now instead of the normal 2 hours where I harass them on the phone about things and they didn't expect me to. And I say harass in a nice way because, I get very animated and I get very excited. So thank you for having me back. And I'm glad that I can be here to bring good tidings. I'm going to share a PowerPoint here if we're lucky, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to talk a whole bunch. So let's try this and see what happens here. All right, hopefully y'all can see this, and if you can't, someone scream at me now, Steve.
You are good, Keith. Carry on.
Wonderful. Okay, so if you were here the last time around, I had a short presentation about the state of physical music in 2020, according to MRC data. This is, of course, in the United States. I see a lot of folks in the chat that are coming from other countries. So I apologize that this is going to be very US focused. But with that said, I want to talk a little bit about 2020 if you were not here the last time around. So in 2020, total physical album sales were down 7.4% in the United States. Digital album sales fell by 12.5%. CD album sales, I know this is a trend. I keep saying things are down. CD album sales were down 26%, but vinyl album sales obviously were up. Everyone knows that. It's an incredible success story that we continue to trumpet from the rooftops whenever we can. Vinyl album sales were up 46% in 2020 to 27.5 million. That's an amazing number considering the pandemic and what it caused across the marketplace. And also, that growth in 2020 marked our 15th consecutive year of growth for vinyl album sales in the United States. And that 27.5 million number is the biggest sales year for vinyl albums since MRC data began electronically tracking sales of music in 1991, back when we were known as SoundScan. And then we became Nielsen SoundScan, and then we became Nielsen Music, and then we became Nielsen Music MRC data, and now we are MRC data. But sometimes you can just call us SoundScan and we'll still answer the phone. It's totally fine. Also of note, in 2020, album sales in the indie strata of stores, that's that bar graph on the far right, were up 19%. I didn't break out all of the different stratas, mass merchants and retailers, but that is all available and we can certainly give that to you, and you can see that every week in MRC's Connect system. But I wanted to highlight just how well indie stores did in 2020, considering just the incredible sort of drama that everyone had to go through with the pandemic and what it caused. And it just shows how they triumphed, considering the struggles that everyone had. So I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So where we are at so far in 2021, we're not quite at mid-year yet. So this is sort of a preview to what we will probably be doing a little bit more in depth around our mid-year report, which comes out in July. So this is just through May 20th. And so physical album sales so far in 2021 through May 20th, we have sold 28.6 million physical album sales. And that's the two numbers on the far right added together. The 14.2 on the top, which is vinyl LPs, and the 14.4 million CDs on the bottom. That's actually up compared to where we were year to date a year ago. Again, it's a difficult comparison to make, considering you're comparing to a time during COVID where many stores closed and Amazon wasn't shipping things that were vinyl or CD because they were not essential goods. So it's difficult to compare year to date versus year to date a year ago. But if you look at 2019, we're actually up compared to where we were in 2019. So I think that's pretty incredible. And obviously vinyl is kind of picking up the slack of the CDs falling off. But it's pretty amazing how when you compare year to date in 2021, we're actually up compared to where we were year to date in 2019. Gonna move on. Wanted to look at how our major genres, we define them as core genres, have fared with vinyl sales year to date, and what, if any, genre shifts we've seen. So through May 20th, of our core genres, R&B hip hop vinyl album sales had the largest increase in the market, gaining 3.7%, while rock actually declined by 4%. Don't cry for rock though. Rock, as you can see on the right-hand side, still has more than half of all vinyl album sales based upon our core genre definition. But R&B hip hop vinyl album sales are 19.3%. We have different ways of defining genre within Connect. We have core genre, and then we also have just genre. And some of the folks who are more familiar with Connect will understand what this means. But basically, core genre means you don't overlap from one genre to another. you have one core genre and that is all you are, but you can have multiple genres applied to you, because obviously now, you could have an electronic dance, rock, folk album all at the same time. So there's different ways of slicing the data, but we thought the best way to do this so there wouldn't be any overlap between the genres was to look at core genre. So anyway, it's super interesting to see how R&B hip hop has really picked up so far. Here's a look at the top selling physical albums by format so far in 2021. Harry Styles' Fine Line leads the pack with 99,000 in terms of vinyl albums. Ariana Grande's Positions is the top selling vinyl album that was released in 2021. That's tricky because the top is just the top 5 sort of pure, what are the top selling vinyl albums of the year so far. But since it's kind of full of a bunch of old titles, I thought, okay, let's look at what's actually sort of newer, that's actually doing well. And that's what Ariana and Lana and Foo Fighters are right there at 1, 2, and 3. And then on the bottom is the top selling CDs of 2021. What's interesting is that that top row and the second row will change like in the next week, because we just had Taylor Swift's Evermore come out on vinyl on May 28th, and Billboard's already reported that it sold more than 40,000 copies in its first 3 days. That's the biggest sales week ever for a vinyl album in MRC data history after only 3 days of sales. A large number of those sales were driven by pre-orders that began in December through her website. So keep that in mind. So we suspect that Taylor's album will probably end up selling probably enough to end up among the top 5 selling vinyl albums of the year. And it could instantly become the top selling vinyl album released in 2021, surpassing Ariana's Positions. Interestingly enough, Positions had the same situation happen to it as Evermore. Evermore was first released in December as a digital album and as a streaming album, but its physical goods were delayed because of the fact that it was a surprise album and they didn't have time to make any physical goods. The same thing happened with Positions. Positions was also a surprise album. She announced it, I think, about 2 weeks before it dropped. She was able to get the CD out in time, but the cassette and the vinyl were delayed until I believe it was April. And again, she had months and months of pre-orders helping her first week. So it'll be interesting to see if we see more of that, in the future, or if we'll see more of what Billie Eilish is actually doing. Billie's album comes out on July 30th, and it will be available in basically every format on July 30th. Streaming, digital, CD, cassette, vinyl. There are more, I think there's at least 7 different vinyl variants for Billie, 6 different colors, and then a 100% black recycled vinyl. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes later on as we progress throughout the year. And I fell into a rabbit hole, as one does with Connect, when I was researching stuff for this presentation. I thought, what albums over-index at indie stores? And so what this is those albums that had strong physical album sales, but also over-indexed at indies. So what we're actually looking at here are those albums that sold at least 10,000 physical copies in the indie strata, where at least 50% of their total physical album sales came from indies. So what's interesting is that aside from the obvious kind of rock-leaning titles that I think a lot of average folks would expect to see on a list like this, like Tame Impala or Phoebe Bridgers, there's a lot of hip hop titles, a lot of sort of older hip hop titles, Kanye, Kendrick, Tyler, the Creator, Pop Smoke. Well, actually Pop isn't really that old, but Wu-Tang. And I think that speaks to kind of the desire that fans and consumers have to buy, most likely this is all vinyl, but the desire that they have to buy hip hop on vinyl, if only they could get it sooner. But it's hard to sort of reconcile that when artists release music so quickly and there's just not enough time to catch up. But once they get it out there, obviously it sells incredibly. And with Record Store Day coming up, we thought we would want to take a look back at Record Store Day 2020, and just a reminder of how impactful it was across the 3 drops. Last year, 13% of all vinyl albums sold at indie stores were sold during the 3 Record Store Day drop weeks. So that's the 1.41 million you see there on the left-hand side. Now on the right It's just a ranked list of the top selling RSD vinyl albums during the 2020 drop weeks. And the biggest seller across the 3 drops was Billie Eilish's Live at Third Man Records release. Last thing is, hey, it's me kind of pimping out the Billboard charts. Just wanted to say that Billboard, while we have many charts now that are based on streams and overall units and consumption, we still have album sales charts. We have a Tastemaker albums chart. It's a 25 position weekly chart that ranks the top selling albums at indie and small chain stores. We have a vinyl albums chart. It's a 25 position chart that's just pure vinyl album sales across all providers. That's Amazon, that's the Amoebas and Newberries and mom and pop shops of the world, Target, Walmart, it's everybody. Then we also have a top album sales chart, which is just the top 100 sellers, full stop, current and catalog combined. And then we also have a top current album sales chart, which is only for current albums, not catalog. So, Journey and Rumors get thrown out the window there. That's only current stuff. That's just a sampling. We also have other sales charts as well, but these are kind of the 4 big kahunas in terms of album sales. And that is all from me. I believe I'm going to somehow see if I can stop sharing this and throw it back to Steve.
Keith, thanks. 2 Let's Talk Physical appearances in a row. You did not disappoint. That was great data. Thanks for pulling that together for us.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled, and I'm amazed I could contain that in about 11 minutes.
That was really impressive. A couple quick things for you. We see the continuing decline of CDs, yet there's some pretty impressive unit sales associated with your top CD titles. Any insight on that and what you're observing?
I think what's been interesting, Carrie Underwood is an especially interesting case because she kind of put out like 2 perfect albums for her demographic, because it has to be so targeted now with CDs because people just don't buy CDs in the way that they used to. And so there really has to be a compelling reason, or you're really super serving that particular demographic. And with Carrie, she put out a Christmas album and then she put out a Christian gospel album. And I think her fans and her demographic, which tends to be from the CD generation, they tend to be a little bit older. I think that was the right format for that right artist. But I think aside from her, if you look at the other CDs, it tends to be those that come from the CD era, like a Taylor Swift, or those who actually had a really cool product, like a K-pop act, which we've seen do incredibly well with their really cool packaging. I think those are the obvious takeaways from the CD world right now. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. And one thing I didn't say was that we saw some impressive sales on cassette albums. I didn't have a presentation on that, but Olivia Rodrigo and 21 Pilots did, in the thousands with their cassettes. So watch out for cassettes, baby. We're coming back.
So last question. And thanks for throwing in that. Yeah, that last note on cassette. We're seeing some increase there, but on the format, the mid-year report is forthcoming, right? You're compiling all of that. We'll see that sometime, maybe second or third week in July. Is that fair?
Yeah. The MRC data is going to put together a mid-year report as we do every year. It's kind of like our year-end report, except probably not as crazy voluminous, but we are working on it right now. It should come out at the top of July, reflecting the first 6 months trends that we've seen and lots of charts and lots of data. And yeah, super excited about that. Thank you for mentioning that.
For sure. Keith Caulfield, you don't know it, you're getting a virtual standing ovation. Thanks again for being here. Great presentation. Special thanks to Megan and everyone at MRC as well for helping support Keith today. So next up, this is the main programming for today. And it's a Record Plants perspective. I'd like to also throw out some props to our friend Billy Fields from Warner Music Group, who introduced us to some new friends that have responsibility for pressing plants overseas. So we have a very unique, exclusive look inside the vinyl pressing plants. There's 6 leaders from around the globe that will share with us the challenges that they're facing with the vinyl global demand, shifting artists and label priorities, planning for the near term, and also why they are hopeful, many of them, for the long term. They're going to share some insight there. So with that, now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, for the panel today, A to Z Media's Sarah Robertson. Sarah, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Good, thanks, Steve. Happy to be here. I'm sure that these are pressing topics for a lot of people. I see a lot of familiar names popping up in the chat, and I think this is a hot issue that we're looking at. And when we're listening to Keith and we're seeing how all the sales are going up, the challenge obviously is for all the labels, whether the independents or the majors, getting the product on frontline releases and on back catalog out there to be able to meet these, this increased demand, which is, exciting to see. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the panelists have to say on the subject and, take it from there. And as you say, give some people a perspective and hopefully a little bit of hope for the future as to, what we're looking at down the road.
Sounds great.
All righty. I think everybody needs to mute themselves. There we go. Lovely. Let's just get everybody onto here. Lovely. Super. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sarah Robertson. I'm the founder and CEO of A to Z Media. We are a manufacturing, printing, packaging broker, probably the largest one in, if not globally, certainly in North America. And this is our world, physical media. And the challenges that we are all experiencing right now, I think we're looking today to look for our panelists to give us some insight and really what they're seeing from their point of view. We're very lucky, we have a real global selection of vinyl manufacturing facilities, and I'm excited to hear what everybody's got to say. So if each one of you could give a brief introduction as to who you are, your manufacturing facility, what you're seeing now, and whilst no one has a crystal ball, what are your predictions or what are you planning as a manufacturing plant for the future in the next 12, 24 months? So if we would like to start, maybe we'll start domestically. Sean, why don't you kick us off?
All right, well, thank you. I'm Sean Rakowski, VP at Independent Record Pressing, neatly tucked between New York City and Philadelphia in the Northeast. We are probably a mid-sized pressing plant in terms of the scope of, all the pressing plants around the world, primarily pressing for larger independent labels. Just like everybody talks about, it's crazy for us. COVID has added a lot of new challenges to the supply chain, but we continue to grow. Just to give everyone a perspective, about this time last year, we had about 400,000 in open orders. Now we've got about 1.2 million in open orders, just to sort of give everyone a perspective of the growth that we've seen over the last few months in terms of backup. Last year I was saying, things will be good through at least 2020, the beginning of 2022, but pretty much I think we're going to be on this pace for sure this year, 2022, and into the next year. A lot of factors are going to play into that with how people spend their disposable dollar, just how things work out with the global supply chain. I mean, we're seeing challenges on pretty much every front, whether it's getting stampers, getting paper, getting cardboard, getting PVC. It challenges every single day. And so it just requires a lot of preparation, foresight as best we can to try to overcome all of those things to make records.
I'm not sure that was so positive, Sean, with all the shortages. So let's move over to Europe. Peter, why don't you give us some perspective of coming out of Optimal?
Hi, my name's Peter Runge. I'm working with Optimal Media for more than 20 years already. And Optimal Media is a quite large pressing plant in Germany, providing vinyls, books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, for indies and majors as well. Our vinyl capacity is about 30 million vinyls a year, of which 20% already are in color or specials. And the capacity grew tenfold since 2005. And for the next 2 years, we plan to get hold on enough PVC and paper to be able to provide more vinyl than today. But we can't promise that. At least it looks good.
Well, there we go. So why don't we just stay in Europe? Tom, do you want to tell us from record industry what you're seeing?
Yeah, my name is Tom Vermeulen. I am the CEO and owner of Record Industry. The plant I bought from Sony in 1998. We're running approximately 11, 12 million records this year. This is the max we do, of course. In my opinion, demand has grown, has tripled in the last half year, which means, in my opinion, that we have 3 times as many orders coming in this year as there is capacity available. So hence the longer lead times, which are extending massively. I see a little slowdown at the moment, fortunately. So our horizon is not moving more backwards now, but you never know what's coming. Most companies now are projecting a bit better. They try to forecast new release a bit better and don't use all the capacity for back catalog. I don't see a change soon. Maybe lead times will be a bit shorter, but not the lead times we're after, which would normally be before COVID around 5-6 weeks, I would say, for most of them. So I think we need an extra possibly 150 to 200 million records a year on extra capacity, which you can't just grab from somewhere. So we need another 200 to 250 extra presses globally to make all these records. So that's impossible. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen after COVID. Things will change. I don't know how much and how dramatically, but for now, you know, from a business point of view, it's very nice. From the receiver point of view, it's a nightmare because people can't get reorders in time. It takes much longer. When they have a hit, they need to wait for another 3 months to get a refill. So it's really hard to do anything about it, I think, because again,
I think that's what everybody's seeing. And one of the things which, just to say to the people listening to this, whilst everybody is very busy, there is a lot of anxiety. Everybody on this, you know, panel and all the other manufacturing plants out there, they want to be delivering your goods as quickly as possible, you know. So these extended lead times are not anything that people are looking to be in an environment that they want to trade. It's just a, you know, really very much a response to what the market is. And I think we're all going to have to sit here and see what happens after COVID and to, you know, see where we're going. So just to come back to the US, to come to Ben, to the best dressed manufacturing plant, I think we can say, in the industry at Third Man. Maybe you can give us some insight from your point of view.
Yeah, I was apparently the only one that got the email that there was a dress code for the panel today. But that's cool. No, my name is Ben Blackwell. I'm in Nashville here at Third Man Records general headquarters. Our pressing plant, Third Man Pressing, is in Detroit. Things are crazy. I don't think I can say everyone's covered what everyone else is dealing with in terms of turnaround times. But managing as much as we can. We're adding presses, we're adding staff, we're doing everything we can to just work best with customers, to work best with all of our partners. I see more and more startups in the supply chain, more people who are doing plating, more people who are doing cutting, trying to help out, just start small. And my hope and what I'm expecting to see is that helps alleviate a little bit here and there for everyone else, and that becomes a total net positive.
I mean, I think that's what we want to see. And you look at a lot of the plants that started in recent years, how they've grown and, you know, become so much more a vibrant part of the ecosystem of vinyl manufacturing. I'm sure that's going to happen. It's the ramp up time. I think everybody here realizes that, you know, it takes longer than you think. It's not quite as plug and play. So Grace, in my favorite town or city in the US, tell us what's happening you're seeing in Portland.
Yeah, so I'm with Cascade Record Pressing in Portland, Oregon. Yeah, since last spring, you know, our sales have increased at least triple the amount, I'd say. Yet our staff has remained relatively the same. You know, getting new staff in, qualified staff during COVID has been a struggle, of course. So we're making, you know, some expansions here and there. We're making some improvements to our machines, adding more equipment, hoping to increase, you know, faster turn times and what have you. So ultimately, I think, you know, in the future, we're going to see a lot of growth, a lot of hopefully new career opportunities. I mean, we're constantly right now looking for experienced staff, which is hard to kind of seek out and train. The training involved is quite extensive, of course. But I think the record manufacturing has an enormous human element that I think often gets overlooked.
Absolutely. And I think that's everybody's trying to make incremental changes to use what they have, you know, and, you know, some of the smaller plants, I think, are doing it in a more of a scrappy way because of the resources they have. And obviously the bigger plants that have the ability to expand their infrastructure are trying to do that as well. So,
sure,
you know, everybody's looking to see growth. And I think that's the exciting thing we all need to take away from here is there is a lot of growth. You know, you listen to Keith and we're all seeing this. You know, something else that we're seeing as well that, you know, I'd like the panelists to speak to is a change that I've seen, and I know you guys have seen it as well, is we're not just pressing black vinyl anymore. You know, releases with multiple color variants and complex packaging. You know, I think that we know from the people on the panel, you know, listening to this know why we're putting out multiple releases or why labels are. But from the manufacturing standpoint, you know, I'm not sure who wants to grab this to say how that impacts productivity and what you're seeing from the, you know, the plant's perspective.
I mean, I can jump in and just say, just looking at the numbers here, 2020, we're running about 50% black and 50% color on new releases. Compared to 60-40 just a year ago, 60% black, 40% color. The biggest change actually on catalog. In catalog in 2000, the last year, we've seen 75% black, 25% color, and compared to like just 12% color the year before that. And all vinyl isn't created equal. So the amount of all the different color variations definitely impact production. I mean, I was liking it earlier this week to Tetris. So the game Tetris, the black vinyl is like the straight piece, and then all the different mixes are the different sizes that you got to shape down there, and you're trying to figure out how to schedule it in. I mean, we've gotten just in the last 2 months one order that was 20,000 units that had 7 different color versions, and another one, 20,000 units with 9 different color variants. So we look at those as individual jobs. So that definitely impacts capacity in terms of how fast we can turn things around.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, I know that there are different machines as well, and some you're looking at machines working at different rates. So whether if you're doing something that's very manual on a manual press as opposed to an automated press, it takes a lot longer to make those records as well.
Yeah, we only have automatic presses, but even you mix it when you do color mixes, just it takes longer even on some of the automatic presses, I think.
Yes, and with the specials that you have to do on a manual press, it takes a minute per special vinyl, and an automated one will come out every 24, 25 seconds. That's quite a difference. And the special, a color change, that eats up a lot of capacity. instead of a color change, so taking one color out of the extruder, putting another color in, I could produce in the same time with that press 120 perfect records that I can't produce because I have to change the color. And at the moment, I have more than 50 different colors on my 54 lines. And hundreds more waiting.
And that's a real impact. I think you can see everybody listening that that really adds to the time and complexity to get out runs out the door with all these different breakups and stopping and starting, and looking at that. So the question I think that a lot of the labels are looking at, and I think that, Tom touched on a little bit earlier saying, planning is huge, but does anybody else have anything to the audience to say, this will help you? These are some tips as to how to make things either run more smoothly or anything that you're seeing that is helping production from your end.
Difficult one, because so the only thing is try to plan ahead more and try to let's say what happens a lot now is that people are releasing a new album. They start with 1,000, and somewhere down towards the date we're going to ship, they want to add another 1,000, and then we say, sorry, that's a reorder for us because we're fully booked. So more people are underestimating the sales of their vinyls. So of course it's for me easy to say don't order 1,000 but 2,000, and then they probably get stuck with 1,000. But in general, they will sell them because at the moment anything on vinyl sells.
I also think splitting releases up sometimes can be helpful as well. If you anticipate possibly selling 2,000, I've seen a few labels place a reorder around the same time or shortly after placing their initial order, and that can be helpful in scheduling and making sure you get the first 1,000 quicker, for instance.
Yeah, I think that we see this a lot when we're dealing with clients, and just to put it out there, is actually trying to manage the quantities, because I do think something that is worth talking to that, we're seeing every day is people getting very concerned they're not going to be able to get reorders. So they are ordering a lot more vinyl to start with, which then consequently has a knockdown effect of consuming enormous amounts of capacity, because everybody, instead of ordering 2, 3, are now ordering 5, 10, because they're projecting out what they may need for a 12-month period. And whilst that makes sense, it is also a lot harder to fit that in. So, one of the things on larger orders that we're saying to people, do you really need do you need 30,000 on street date, or could you have it in increments of 10,000 or whatever it is, to try and spread things out? Because I do think that there's, as we've said, there's only limited capacity. So we have to work with what we all have to try and do the best job for all the people that we're dealing with. One on a sort of happier note, because I do think there are a lot of great strides that are happening here, is whilst vinyl itself is not a sustainable item, and we all know that, I do want to applaud a lot of the stuff that's going on in Europe with sustainability and what you're trying to do. I know that there's a lot of push from labels in Europe and carbon neutrality and things. So maybe you guys can talk about some of the things that you're doing within the plant to deal with this, to address this.
It's hard to press a record from something different than PVC. So lately it's a bit less hectic around it, but last year I almost get a question from a company every 2 weeks asking for a record which is pressed from the plastic they got from the ocean. And I have now a similar answer to everybody, and that would be if it would need to look like a record, it's not a problem. But if it needs to sound like a record, it's impossible. Because it's already hard enough to press a decent vinyl with good quality from the PVC we're buying, which is virgin vinyl. So pressing a record from something else is, let's say, in my opinion, impossible. Looking at the packaging board, we're already using board which is produced with about 80% of waste paper. When it needs to look nice, as everybody's expecting, the outside needs to be of virgin virus, so that's why it's so nicely white. And the price is always on the line, because we can make board of there's board available from elephant grass, as they call it here. It's very green, very sustainability wise is really perfect. But when I tell my customers that the sleeve would cost 3 times as much as a normal sleeve, they say, oh no, let's stick to the old one. So the only thing we can do at the moment is offering vinyl on the 1 or 2 presses. We run on solar energy. We have some solar panels on the roof. We can feed 2 presses of it, and that's, in my opinion, the only thing we can do about it.
And from my side, I can say that we also had the same question to press a vinyl out of ocean plastic waste. And the problem is we can use recycled PVC, but the PVC we made, so like scrap vinyls that came from our factory, because we are responsible and we will be held responsible for what is in the vinyl. And it has to comply with REACH regulations, and we can't do anything about it when we take some plastics from, where do I know, from some scrap yard or something else or something like that. So we concentrate in getting new steam boilers that use less energy. We use gas to heat the steam. That is far more efficient than do it by electricity. We have new cooling towers that use less energy. And a vinyl itself is not that less sustainable. You only need energy once to produce it. Then it can rest on the shelf 100 years, wasting no energy at all. That's the difference to streaming, where the hard disk rotates all the time, or the computer center needs tons of energy, even though you're not listening to anything.
Thank you. One other, just like a fun question, because I know this is something, whereas now we really can't do it, but just, you know, putting it out to you guys. And I know that, you know, Third Man, or certainly you've worked on a lot of projects that have had some super cool effects on the vinyl you're producing, you know, with holographs and spinning things. I mean, no time for any of that this year, Ben, or are you still experimenting on?
Always trying new stuff. So we're fortunate. We have manual presses and we have automatic presses. And so the manual presses are, you know, that's your drawing board, that's your blank canvas, that's where you figure things out. Oftentimes, I guess now the queries or the ideas may be coming more so from the customers themselves than us spending free time to brainstorm and come up with stuff. Just because we don't have as much spare free time to do it. But yeah, people asking about the colored vinyl and should we not be doing colored vinyl? And I think it's a really, really slippery slope, because so many people's, the appeal to all of this is that colored vinyl. It's that variation. It's that, you know, I need all 10 of these variants, however weird or however confused that may sound. That's a big push behind all of this. You know, it's hard to tell. You know, MRC doesn't give you colored vinyl sales stats. That would be really interesting to know. But you know, when you see things like Target exclusives that remain Target exclusive, not just one-time pressings, but continually, those are largely colored vinyl things, and these are big pressing numbers. So you kind of got to take the good with the bad in that regard.
And I think that's what, when you look at the resurgence of physical, whenever you're talking to people, people want to own something special, and whether it's the packaging or the vinyl or whatever it is that speaks to the consumer is really the story that the labels are trying to tell. And I think that's what has engaged and captured the curiosity of so many people when they've been locked inside and, you know, looking at things. I mean, again, not to, and I don't want to, you know, harp on it too much, but I'm sure the reason why a lot of people are listening to us today is really talking about capacity. And it seems like there's no silver bullet here that any of us, you know, have to this, other than expansion within your own manufacturing facilities and, you know, maybe some players coming into the market. But it doesn't seem, just to reiterate, that this is going to change within the next 12 months. I think the expectation for longer lead times and having to manage your release schedule is something that everybody here is seeing. Just to, you know, I think that needs to be communicated to everybody, you know, that's watching this.
I was just going to jump in and say, you know, music is free essentially. So I'm pretty psyched that people are willing to pay money for music, however that is, whether it's, you know, 20 different color variations or whatnot, despite it impacting capacity. I mean, the fact that people are spending money for music is a really good thing. And the problems we're talking about are kind of good problems, because I'd much rather be dealing with this than the other way.
Additionally to that, I would say, you know, where we're finding ourselves now seems to be where the larger picture music industry was 20 years ago, which was you needed a 6-month lead time to plan a release. Maybe it wasn't for manufacturing, it was for press and publicity and promotion. But now we're finding that with vinyl, just because everyone realizes what the game is and everyone wants to participate in it. And so because of that, you know, the timing takes longer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all of you are having conversations, or if you're not, I certainly am, with people really looking at 2022, which seems insane when we're in June. But it's realistic that everything is busy. I'm sure everybody here is busy and everybody that we're speaking to is busy. So again, it's, you know, managing that expectation to know that we will get through it, and for people to be, you know, thoughtful when they're putting together what they're looking to release, I think is key. Anything else that you guys want to share with the people listening that might be helpful to them? Come on.
I guess I'll just say one thing, and it's super obvious, but probably shouldn't set a vinyl street date until you have an approved test pressing and approved artwork. It's amazing how much I see that, but that will just make everything flow so much more smoothly. Again, totally understanding that we aren't artists, and the things that make artists so great are oftentimes the things that frustrate people operationally. But
and that's been impacted as well, Sean. I'm sure everybody can, you know, speak to that. You know, the problems, the delays with lacquers and getting test pressings out. I mean, that's added on to everything this year as well. It's not just been capacity in the pressing, it's been getting out, you know, test presses that used to take a couple of weeks and now on extended terms as well. So it's the whole supply chain that has been slowed down that's had this impact. I mean, I'm assuming that's what everybody is, you know, seeing as well. I have one thing as well to put out to you guys, because this is something I'm hearing. And Grace, maybe you can speak to this, because I know that where you are is a little bit smaller, like space-wise. With all the releases stacking up, how are you dealing with all the print that's coming in the door? I mean, that I'm assuming is a challenge for everybody, but.
Yeah, space is becoming a huge issue for us, actually. We recently are acquiring more warehouse space. It's literally stacking up on each other. And so that is becoming an issue, obviously, just for folks making the records, putting them together.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe that's a hint for some people when you're looking at a release. If you're not going to be getting your vinyl until December, from a cash flow point of view, for you to try and stabilize your business, maybe hold off on some of the ordering, if you're not just ordering, you know, a finished product from your supplier, you know, to try and spread it out, because, and none of the plants have any space to store it. I mean, Ben, Sean, I mean, I've been to, you know, both of your places. I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? Space constraints are an issue.
Yeah. be quiet for 5 seconds, Sean. Jeez. The dirty secret about record pressing is you're not really in the pressing business. You're in the storage business. Whatever you can store for people's stuff. We have some offsite storage, but it's troubling. That's probably honestly our biggest challenge is maintaining storage and keeping accurate records and all of that. I know the bigger plants do, I think, have a better handle on that. But for us, it's a constant challenge of you want to take those big orders that folks want to do with you, but then it's also, okay, where do we put the 30 pallets for all the jackets? There's a pressing plant that just opened here in Nashville called the Vinyl Lab or Vinyl Labs. They've got one press, small. They've got they're doing a bar and they're doing a performance space and they've got a rooftop deck, all this other stuff. And I'm looking around and tour the place before they're open and I'm realizing, you guys don't have anywhere to store anything, do you? And they're like, we've got some space across the street, but even so, you so easily get filled up that it does become problematic.
We made a conscious decision this year we were looking at additional storage space, but it came down to, do we want to buy an extra press or do we want to pay for a lease? And we decided to go for an extra press. So, I mean, that's, we're always terrified about the fire marshal.
Yes, and we decided for more presses and more pellet space. Even though we have 20,000 pellet spaces, it's never enough, never. And you need people to operate presses. That's also a scarce thing.
Again, I think these are the things that I don't think people think about so much when you're looking at capacity issues. It's not just, having the presses, it's having the people to run the presses. And, it's not something you can just walk in and be like, oh, I can do that. I mean, I know that certainly some of the manual ones, people take years and years to perfect to be able to, use those. So it's getting, people back in to, run the presses, it's all these different things where the whole market is not just the music industry. Everybody's feeling PVC shortages, supply chain delays. I mean, I think we are, a little microcosm of that going on, and, staffing is having that impact as well. So I think we're almost out of time. So if anybody has any final thoughts to end us with, actually, we're installing another 20 presses next week. Don't worry, I've got you guys. Anything positive like that to finish us off?
Yeah, I would say positively, if you're planning for a spring release in 2022, we got you covered. So that's the positive, optimistic thing I got to say.
Well, what I think it's great. It's very clear that everybody is trying to run their facilities the most efficient way. I just saw Peter put that up, but I'm sure, you're running 7 days, 24/7, as are, other plants, to try and deliver the goods to, all the good people that are listening to this. So I want to, reach out and thank all of you for taking the time on different time zones to, share your insights and thoughts with everybody here. And I will throw it back to Portia and to Steve to, round us up.
Thank you, Sarah. That was such a great panel. Can you guys hear me? I totally yelled out loud when Sean said, don't set a release date until you have an approved test pressing. I was like, yeah, it's like, that is such a word, word to the wise. Definitely do that. I remember people being very happy when we would do that at Kill Rock Stars. So thank you guys. That was fantastic. I hope everyone really enjoyed it. It was so fun to see so many friends in the chat. So this was a really good one. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, Ben, and by the way, don't feel so badly. That memo was for the after party as far as the dress code. So you're good.
I'll see you there.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Sean, Peter, Grace, Tone, and Sarah. Great job.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.